Hi, Paul.
Hi, Suva. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. How are you doing today? And I think it's not good morning, it is good afternoon in Australia, right?
Yeah, it's 2:30 p.m.
2:30 p.m. and here it is 9:08 a.m.
Oh, lovely. Hmm.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have this conversation with you, Paul, for the new book that you have just finished writing. And in fact, it's in a publication stage.
Yep.
Uh, I think another few days we'll have the book.
Yep.
Uh, so rather than me telling the book, will you show the book to everyone?
Yeah, of course. Here we are. The Wise Team Coach, crafting
Yeah, wow.
an approach to team coaching.
Yes. And it's also the first time I am seeing after I had the opportunity to read the book before it got published.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw the soft copies and we had a couple of chat on that, but it's good to see the book and I'm waiting for it to arrive in India.
Yeah. And thank you for participating in the whole pre-review process. Your feedback was very helpful. Thank you.
I think it was a great opportunity for me to see how this book got created, your thought process, and reading it was quite a learning experience for me, I must say.
Great.
Paul, I don't think you need any introduction just for everyone else. Paul is a coach is an understatement. Paul is coaching for last 30 years. Am I right, Paul?
In a sort of professional capacity, more like 20 years. Yeah.
But in from the work plus outside, it's together 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
And, yeah.
Hmm.
And Paul has written multiple books on coaching, on team coaching, and his recent interest has been wise leadership, which he has written with Dr. Susie Skinner. Paul, first question to you. Like you have written so much on team coaching. You have also written about systems and you have
Hmm.
some lovely newsletters that you write at quarterly basis. And
Hmm.
that's how I came to know you like around 8 years back.
Ah.
So what made you write this book in spite of you having such volume of work behind you on team coaching? So
Hmm.
what made you write this book?
Um, well, whenever I write a book, it's really it's an output of me going through a genuinely exploratory process to learn for myself. And this particular book, as I say, I've been doing team coaching for probably about 15 years. Um, but during much of that time, really felt pulled in different directions by different people telling me I'm supposed to do it in particular ways, and some of that advice was contradictory, and some of it didn't really resonate for me. And so, and I found also as a supervisor that people coming to supervision wanting to really explore their team coaching practice, that they too really felt pulled in different directions by folks. And yet, if you went and really sort of burrowed beneath some of these messages that you were hearing and things that you were reading, they weren't particularly evidence-based. It all seemed somewhat anecdotal, which is fine, based on personal experience, and that's fine. But so I really wanted to understand for myself and get further clarity around my own model around team coaching. And so what I did was I went and basically did a huge kind of meta literature review of about 500 articles and read all the books out there on team coaching and extracted from that, well, what I found in there was all these debates where people didn't agree, which said to me, okay, and some of those debates where the global coaching associations don't agree. So it says to me, yeah, we actually need to really think through our own journeys here. And the book is about helping people to find their own journey whilst referring to those debates that were in the literature, but also some really cool ideas in the literature, which I now use in my own practice, and I find them to be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think you have spoken about it in your course also, the course that you run, TLIM.
Yeah.
Uh, about so should we take it as this is your latest understanding of the team coaching that you are doing and you are learning? Is that how we put that book as?
Yeah, because the book's only just published, so it's relatively recent. So that's my kind of where I sit now on my journey with team coaching. And that's not to say it won't shift and evolve. I hope it does. And the book talks about framing, not only talks about framing your own real clarity around your own team coaching model, but saying, hey, that model that you build for yourself surely will continue to evolve and change as you learn new stuff, have new experiences, and just try out new stuff. So yeah, it's a moment in time. It's my kind of moment in time. Yeah.
So in the coaching language, we can say this is your here and now for team coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good framing.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
I also felt so, and I want to read out the first few lines of the first email that I wrote to you. That how I look at the book, because today morning as I was thinking through our chat today, I was looking
Hmm.
at it and I said, okay. So and then we will dive into an overall description of the book, and then I have some questions for you
Sure.
which we will talk about. So I remember after reading the book, I wrote a long email to you, and what I wrote in the first paragraph of it is this book is an absolute treasure trove for a seasoned coach who wants to get a meta view of team coaching. I felt like I was in an archive or museum, and you were gently accompanying me to different rooms and telling me what to see in each room. And you are waiting there for me to explore, pause, think, and assimilate. So that's how I understood the book, because it kind of gives an overall perspective of team coaching, different ideas. And sometimes I also saw the ideas are contradictory. And I also noticed, Paul, like a true coach, you haven't taken a stand. You have kind of put it together. And
Well, I think I've taken a stand, but not the kind of stand I think you're alluding to. And a lot of, not all, but a lot of books on team coaching, a lot of the courses I've been to take a very particular perspective and say this is the best way to do it.
Hmm.
And I certainly haven't taken that kind of a stand. What the kind of a stand I've taken is you can't become a really great team coach really by thinking about it solely in terms of competencies and skills because it's just too complex. And so my stand is we've got to be continually open to listening to other people's perspectives, but ultimately we need to form our own perspective, the one that works for us. And that's not soft and fluffy, because if that process is rigorous, then our model is rigorous. So my stand is team coaching is just too complex to distill into a single model or a single set of competencies and skills. That's my stand.
So your stand is remain open,
Mm,
review, rework, and arrive.
yeah, definitely.
Can you give an overview of the book, like what all this book covers?
Yeah. So let me just look up the chapters so I don't forget. Yeah, the first chapter is really setting the scene in terms of the overall premise of the book, which I've just done. So it looks at the limitations of a pure competency skills approach and talks about, and there's a number of ways of talking about this, but I like Ralph Stacey's work. He wasn't a team coach or a coach, but he did a lot of work in the leadership space and said that leadership is complex, just like team coaching is complex, and our approaches to the work is personal. So, for example, if I've got a strong value around empathy, really strong value around empathy, you'll see me show up in a particular way as a leader or a team coach. If I've got a stronger value around holding people to account, you'll see me show up differently too. So the practical judgment piece is about recognizing that it's personal, and we become more effective by doing the work and reflecting on the work. And as we continue to do that, we become more capable. So that's what chapter one's about. Chapter two then says, well, if you can't have if competencies and skill frameworks don't do it all for you, then what do we do? And it introduces the three P's framework, which is a nice, simple framework that we can refer to on an ongoing basis as we continually evolve and reflect on our practice. The third chapter basically summarizes from all that work I told you I did, the research piece, and says, look, they're not the only 10 debates, but here's an example of 10 areas where people in the team coaching space don't agree. And there is no evidence that will tell you on any of these debates which is the right position. So you've got to form your own perspective. And then the fourth chapter says, well, and hey, this is my interpretation of where the 3 global coaching associations sit on those 10 debates. And on all but one, they sit in very different places, and yet at least 2 of those associations will say their competencies are the right competencies. Well, they can't all be right. And that's just the nature of how these competency frameworks are formed, which I can talk about later if you want me to. But basically what happens is coaching associations get a bunch of coaches together and say, what constitutes good team coaching? And then they distill all that down into a particular model. Well, if you talk to this group of team coaches, you'll get this model. If you talk to this group of team coaches, you get that model. And that's what's happened with the 3 global coaching associations, and that's why they're different. And your own process of exploring the field and coming up with your own perspective is just as valid if it's rigorous. Then the 5th chapter, we talk about some really cool ideas that came out of that research that I did, ideas that my own clients have just found super useful, and that's really cool and interesting. Chapter 6, it talks, because this is about philosophy, purpose, and practice, the 3 Ps. We can talk about that more later, but that's how the book's structured. And chapter 6 is the 2nd P, which is purpose. Why do you do the work? And in preparing the book, I got 51 team coaches to tell me what their purpose was, and they were in many cases quite different. And so that's really, again, saying that you have to devise your own approach, and part of that is articulating for yourself, why do I do the work? It's not easy work. Why do you do it? And there were some real differences that came out of those 51 purposes. And then chapter 7 is about building your practice model. And I use the framework that I shared with you and on the TLIM as an example practice framework. And then the very last chapter, chapter 8, is about supervision and how to go about leveraging supervision as a team coach. Because I do think, formal or informal, team coaching is so complex that we do need some form of supervision. And by that, I just mean we do need some form of ongoing reflective practice, as I said, whether that's formal or informal.
Thank you for summarizing this, and how, as a reader, I look at the book is that first you talk about the team coaching competences and what's the possibility and limitation of it. Then I think the most interesting chapter for a practitioner is the chapter where you wrote about the 3 coaching association, a 2-letter, 3-letter, and a 4-letter association that we have, and about their competencies, and you showed how different they are, and each of these associations are doing good work. At the same time, the divergence shows that we haven't yet arrived what team coaching look like from different perspectives.
Yeah, and I don't think we will. I mean, there's reviews out there that say, if you're waiting for us all to converge around a single definition of team coaching and a single understanding of how to do team coaching, I don't think you'll ever find it, because I think the more people do the work, the more diversity you'll find, the more kind of richness you'll find, and you'll continue to find people doing it in different ways. So this search for one single best way of doing team coaching appears to me to be somewhat fruitless, because who's to say there will be one single best way of team coaching? There may be multiple ways of doing great work in that space.
And then you talk about the 10 key debate, like there are so many debates, but you picked up 10 debates, which I think that chapter is really intriguing, because I find you have all the debates, you have taken all possible sides and explored their angles and kind of gave a very balanced view. So that was the 10 debates. And then you jumped into 3 Ps, which I think as a practitioner, those chapters will help team coaches to find their own philosophy, purpose, and practice. And then you speak about supervision. So that's how the book is structured. And as a team coach myself, I see this book can give you the present landscape of team coaching, and it can create a great place to start learning and exploring more. The first question on the books chapter that I have for you is like on the chapter 1, where you talked about competency and beyond competency. So summarize your view that where do you see competency works for team coaching, and where do we need to go beyond competencies when we are thinking about team coaching?
Yeah. So competency, that's purely about skills. And what you're trying to do, if you come up with a generic competency framework, is you're looking to come up with one set of rules, if you like, as to how to go about doing the work. And the idea is that one set of rules, we can find that one set of rules that we can go and apply in every scenario, and that'll be the best way to do the work. And there is no evidence, there's no evidence to support any particular framework, because many of these questions that we're talking about in team coaching, there is no evidence that supports one or other place in the debate. So you're not going to, for all the reasons I described before, you're not going to become a great team coach solely by looking at competencies. There's a developmental aspect to this. When you're sitting there as a team coach in a room with a team, let's say there's 8 people in there, there's a lot going on. If I'm coaching one person, if I'm coaching you, there's one relationship in the room. If there's me plus 8 people in the team, 9 people, then there's 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 relationships. I don't know what that adds up to, probably about 50. There's about 50 or 60 different relationships. It's really complex. And your job as a team coach often is to introduce some tension into the room. Not too much tension, but to introduce some tension in the room. And whenever you introduce tension in the room, you'll find that a group of people will look for like a lightning rod to relieve some of that tension, and that lightning rod's going to be you, oftentimes. And so we need to be in quite a mature space from a developmental perspective. So it's not all about skills and competencies. There's a maturity piece. And so, as I said, the way forward, I think the more useful frame is to see it in that way. And so to become better is to do the work, reflect on the work, not just reflect on when I did that skill, what was the outcome, but to reflect on myself in that context, and what am I learning about myself in that context, because that's going to help me develop as a practitioner. So it's not all about competencies and skills, but that's not to say that competencies and skills are not relevant. I think being able to articulate the very fundamentals of what team coaching might be through that lens is a lovely language to help us actually agree at a very broad, high level kind of what it's about. And of course, if the coaching associations, all of whom approach basically, as I said, is to go and they took them all, but somewhere between 18 months and 2 years to do this, because they went and spoke to a lot of team coaches. And as I said, what their basic premise was, if you talk to them all, you can distill this single best way of doing things. I don't believe that, but I do believe that that's really useful, helpful work. I don't really want to relate to that work in terms of, and this is how I'm going to behave as a team coach, but I'd love to understand it, because there's a beautiful opportunity to leverage the collective wisdom of all of those people we spoke to, that they spoke to, and that's helpful and that's useful.
Great. So what I'm hearing, Paul, from the different coaching association, they're a good starting point. They help to have a broad kind of a framework that what do we need. But to become a good team coach, you require things beyond the skills and competencies. And one of the words that I picked up from you is you said maturity. Would you like to go a little bit on this? For example, for a team coach, that, okay, beyond skills and competences, you said maturity. And like, would you say a few words about, how as a team coach, I need to think about the maturity?
Well, there's lots of different ways of thinking about maturity, but the one that springs to mind for me, and I don't want to kind of come across as scary, but is the theories around adult development. Now, theories around, if you think about Kegan's theory around adult development, for example, he says that most adults are kind of at level 3, 4, or 5. Level 3 is where I'm really kind of looking to others to see if I'm doing the right thing. Level
Hmm.
4 is where, yeah, I'm really confident within myself what's the right thing to do. And level 5 is about recognizing that there are multiple best ways of looking at things. And I'm curious about that. And when people bump into each other or when I bump into somebody, it's helpful to look at it through that lens to get curious about what's going on here rather than reactive. So that's one lens. And if you think about that from a team coach perspective, yeah, I think my early days as a team coach, it was scary because if people were telling me, if I was sitting in a room with a team of, I don't know, 8 or 9 people, and they all looked at me and said, we don't like what you're doing here, then I'd feel I wasn't doing a good job. And that's probably my kind of dependent self. Um, then you can become more confident in yourself and say, yes, there is a single right way of doing things. And then you're going to feel confident. It's not going to work for everybody, but if it doesn't work for a particular team, you can say to yourself, well, that team just wasn't ready for my coaching or something. And then there's kind of level 5 where you recognize there's, or the self-transforming self, which recognizes there's multiple ways of doing things. And so I go into the process curious and I'm not, and I'm actually going to be if there's conflict in the room, I'm going to be curious about that because that's going to tell me and tell us, the team, something about what's happening in the room, tell us something that's going to be helpful in helping that team move forward. Now, if you look at the adult development stuff, it says that progression is not something you can learn in a classroom. You kind of progress as you kind of need, you just this kind of unconscious part of you feels the need to be making meaning of the world in a different way. So the way to kind of attempt to accelerate that process is to put yourself outside your comfort zone and get into those reflective habits. And that seems to me quite similar to what someone like a Ralph Stacey would talk about in terms of becoming a better leader or a better team coach. It's that stepping outside of your comfort zone, being prepared to step out of your comfort zone, not jump over a cliff, right? But step outside your comfort zone and learn from that. So the developmental kind of theory kind of to me marries or just feels it actually resonates with my own kind of personal journey around team coaching, that there's this developmental aspect to it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You're talking about connecting this to adult development. And I really resonate with the word that you use, that it is scary. Yes, team coaching at times is scary because you at times feel completely out of control. And
You
what's
are out of
happening?
control. You are out of control. And if you're in that self-transforming space, you know that there is no possibility you will be in control and you're comfortable with that. But if you're in that dependent space, yeah, you'd like to be able to control this so that you can make sure it's not scary. And if you're coming at it from that, as I said, the kind of more independent space, then yeah, you have in your mind that there's a right way of doing things, and the control piece is about ensuring everybody else understands that. Yeah, but it's control. It's all about being comfortable. And I think that being really confident and capable as a team coach is about recognizing that you don't get to control what happens in the room.
Yeah, I think I think wise team coach, and that's a great wise suggestion, that to realize that I am not in control and I will not be in control.
Mm.
And working with the team to find their own control can be one of my roles as a team coach. Is that resonating with you?
Kind of. I mean, I don't think, if I'm a member of a team, I will never have any more, I will never, even if I'm the team leader, I will never have any more control over that team than an external team coach will, because you don't get to control people. You get to influence people, and there are skills around that, and that's where my mind goes to the whole literature around dialogue and our capacity to listen and influence and voice which is probably why with the TLAM program that you talked about and my own philosophy of team coaching, which isn't the right way, it's just one way, that dialogue piece sits at the heart of the work that we do with teams.
The next chapter is about the debates.
Yeah.
So while there are 10 debates, which one is your favorite debate?
Well, they're not like the 10 debates. I mean, there's lots of debates you can pick out the literature, but I thought 10 was a good number, and I do like these debates. I think, yeah, which is my favorite? I like all of them, but probably the most fundamental debates are, firstly, the obvious one, what does a team coach actually do? Because there's no agreement around that. And how important is it that we distinguish what a team coach does from a facilitator, from a consultant? I like that one. But more fundamental than either of those actually is recognizing that we don't all agree what a team is, let alone a team coach.
But the first one intrigued me, Paul. So can you make a few remarks on that? Like, what does a team coach really do according to you and the research and the debate? What's your take?
Well, my conclusion is that that's a really important question for you as a team coach to be able to answer for yourself, because you're going to get asked that by your clients. What do you do? So you need to have an answer, and there is no single answer. So you need to find the answer that resonates best for you. But it is quite important to get your scope right. So one of the debates that we talk about is some people say team coaching is the work that you do with a team. The work that you do is the work that you do with an intact team. So you don't need to worry about what happens before that team comes together or what happens after that team, disperses. Now, some folks, Ruth Wagaman and Lowe, and also Peters and Carr and others say that, well, we think of team coaching more broadly than that. We think the team coach has a role to play in the right from the very birth of the team, and that includes actually getting the right people onto the team, and that includes an effective launch of the team. And Wagaman and Lowe go so far as to say, well, of the work that you can do with a team in being useful, 70% of that value you can add by just making sure you get the right people on the team in the first place. 20% is getting the team launch right. I don't entirely understand that because, again, that depends on how you define a team, I suppose. I mean, this idea that a team is sort of launched and then off it goes and nobody ever comes in and comes out again sounds a bit untrue. But then, and only 10% is the work that you actually do with the team once formed. So that's a pretty important question. And it's a very practical question. This isn't just a theoretical question. When you go and work with a team and the team leader says, well, can you help me actually put the team together in the first place? Do you go, yeah, that's part of what I do as a team coach? Or do you go, no, that you need to go and talk to a recruitment agency or something? It's an important question to answer. And I don't think there is a right or wrong answer because I don't think we will ever align around a single definition of team coaching. That's not something that interests me. But what interests me is, yeah, you as a practitioner, me as a practitioner, we have to be able to answer that question.
Yeah. So the key learning here is that you find your 3 Ps: purpose, philosophy, and process of, and also the word that you used is scope. If you are my client, I should be able to answer that, okay, what falls in the scope of my work?
Yeah.
I do, how I do, and what I find myself responsible for.
Mm.
Yeah? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's the same with any job, really. I mean, if your builder comes round and you say, well, I want you to build an extension and also hang up some pictures in my drawing room. I mean, the builder's going to tell you, well, yeah, I do extensions, but I don't put pictures on walls. You need a handyman for that. You need to be clear about what it is that you do. Any job that you do, you need to be able to say with confidence, this is what I do and this is what I don't do.
Yeah. And I'm also seeing that this allows the team coach to have their freedom. And also, this brings us to the point of contracting.
Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
talk to the leader of the team or the as team as a whole or the client, I think that's the discussion. This is what I do and what do you need? And if there's an alignment, and then probably have a discussion, thrash it out and agree, okay, this is what we are going to do. This is our plan, and maybe periodically review it, that where we are, how is it progressing? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the contracting piece is essential. I think it was Alison Hodge, David Clutterbuck wrote an article or wrote a chapter of a book. Can't remember which book it was. I think it was a supervision book where they said that in their experience, the supervisors, just about 80% of the issues that come to supervision are contracting issues, and I'd say that mirrors my experience as well. That often, sometimes what happens in the supervision space is somebody will come along and tell you about this team coaching piece of work they're doing, and they're in a real pickle. They're in a hole, and how did I get here? And the answer is pretty much always by there's more work you could have done here on the contracting piece. Being super clear up front about what do I do and what do I not do? What am I prepared to what work am I prepared to engage in and what am I not going to engage in because I don't think that's going to work. And for me, it's not maybe I revisit it. I am revisiting it all the time. Because if you're working with a team, you're working with, the team themselves, you're working with the leader of the team, you're working with stakeholders, you're potentially working with HR folks, and their perception of what needs to happen is constantly shifting and changing and shifting and changing. And so you need to be attuned to that on an ongoing basis.
So contracting is important, and as you said that we quoted David Clutterbuck on supervision that 80% of the challenge stays there. That's an important point. That even when we do supervision, we need to focus on that. And in team coaching, contracting is very important. And I remember when you teach TLIM, that's the first thing that you teach about contracting.
There's three things in the TLM. We obviously cover to an extent all of the content, but the three things that I think we really focus on are contracting, dialogue, because as I've said before, dialogue is for me is sits at the heart of team coaching, and team dynamics. Because the one thing that the three global coaching associations all agree on is that team coaches need to have some understanding and capacity to work with team dynamics. And I would agree with that. Not everybody does, by the way. It's one of the 10 debates. Not everybody does agree with that,
Yes.
but it certainly sits well with my model.
So I also want to highlight this important point that you mentioned. So you think there are three important things for team coaching. You think, and that's because it's your book, The Wise Team Coach. Is three things important, which are one is contracting, second is dialogue, third is team dynamics. And this also and it also means probably we need to, as a team coach, we need to build our skills and understanding and reading and studying on these three aspects for sure.
At least those are the three I think are just so fundamental, but there's obviously other issues as well, other things as well, like how to build trust, how to facilitate trust, how to help people manage conflict, how to help people manage diversity and align around common goals and all those things. They're all important, but those three things that you mentioned, I think are just fundamentals in the way that I think about team coaching. But as I said, everybody's got their own way of thinking.
Yeah. Right now, we are only talking about you, Paul. While I will not talk much about the three coaching association and their thing because I want people to read the book. That's an amazing chapter where actually Paul compare the competencies between AC, ICF, and EMCC, and you can see that how different they are, and on team dynamics how similar they are and how divergent they are. This probably also informs us that okay, there is no one thing called team coaching. And that's where Paul's wisdom that figure out what it is for you. And that brings us to three people like philosophy, purpose, and process. Would you talk to us a little bit about what are these three things you see as a team coach? Like what do you mean by purpose, philosophy, and process?
Yeah. So if we say to somebody, hey, it's not all about competencies and skills, they say, well, then what is it about? I mean, you've got to give me something. If I'm seeking to become a better team coach, what am I thinking about if I'm not thinking only about skills and competencies? And the three Ps is a framework that David Lane first came up with a long time ago in the general supervision space, and then Tatiana Bachkarova and Peter Jackson at Oxford Brookes structured their coaching supervision program around it, and I structure all of my coaching and leadership and team coaching material around the three Ps. And had I understood it before I started having children, I would no doubt have thought about my parenting model through the three Ps. And the three Ps stand for one, philosophy, which might sound like this is not about you have to become a philosopher, right? It's basically saying are you aware of how your values and beliefs show up in the work that you do? Do you know which models and frameworks that most appeal to you and why? Because it's that kind of combination of values and beliefs and favorite models that really underpin the work that you do. And are you aware of them? And I said I use this in teaching individual coaching, and people will often say, oh, I'm eclectic, I know 50 different theories and models. And I say, yeah, but that's not the question. The question isn't how many do you know about. The question is, are you self-aware enough to understand which of those have really resonated with you and underpin your practice? So that's the philosophy question. The next question is, why do you do the work? And some people would say, oh, I think I should do the purpose question first. Why do I do the work? Isn't that the place to start? Start where you like. But the logic for starting with starting with philosophy is why you do the work has probably got a lot to do with your values, beliefs, and your thinking around what value that this can add to the community. So the purpose piece is, why do I do the work? And it includes such questions as, and how do I know I'm doing a good job?
How do I know I'm doing a good job?
You can't refer to competencies framework, then you need to define for yourself. And as I said, I got feedback from 51 coaches, and how they decided that they were doing a good job was different. There were two. I can talk about this in a minute, but there were two very different ways of thinking about that. And then the third P is practice, and that's simply, what would I see you doing if I followed you around right from the beginning of your first contact with an organization to getting into the room with the team and finishing off the assignment? What would I see you do? So those are the three Ps.
And what you are suggesting, that I think one of the core principles that you are telling, that as a team coach, I need to have these three Ps understood for me and as a starting point, and then probably after some time review it and edit it.
Well, if you're clear on all those things, you are going to be super clear at talking to people about what you do. You're going to be much more confident in the contracting space, and you're going to be much more confident in the work that you do. So, for example, if we think about the philosophy piece and what's a team? Some people say a team is a bunch of people. It's really clear who's in the team and they've been together for a long time. If that's what I think a team is, and somebody says to me, well, we've got a bunch of people here who kind of work together loosely, but we're not entirely sure quite who's in the team and who's not, blah, 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 then you're going to go, no, I'm not going to work with your team, because you need to get these things clear first. Whereas if I think of a team as something much more fluid and dynamic, maybe I am happy to work with the team, but I've got to be confident within myself, and I've got to be able to articulate that to a client. Purpose, how do I define whether I've done a good job or not? Some people will say, I've done a good job if the client tells me I've done a good job. Others will say, no, I've got more of an internal compass to refer to in deciding whether I've done a good job or not. Again, you want to get clear on that, because if whether or not you've done a good job is entirely in the hands of your client, then that's important. And there's lots of practice questions like, do you do the work by yourself, or do you think that there always needs to be two of you? Is it okay to be coaching the team while you're coaching individuals? There's lots of questions like that. And if you don't think about them, you're going to get yourself into a real mess sometimes. That's my experience as a supervisor. So having clarity on those things helps you contract your way through the assignment such that you just stay really clear and really confident and you actually enjoy the work all the way through.
Yeah. I think that's another interesting point that is mentioned just now, which is also a part of another debate, is that when I work with the team, do I coach some of them one-on-one also?
Yeah.
And then that can also be there in my 3Ps.
Oh, definitely. It's a practice. Yeah.
Whether I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. But you said your 3Ps will evolve. Your 3Ps will evolve because you might do a piece of work and it really didn't go well. And you think, oh, why didn't it go well? It's because I did that and I could have done that. So you've just shifted the practice component of your model. Your model's going to be shifted. My own purpose actually shifted in putting together doing all the research around the TLAM. My own purpose shifted a bit from this real focus on helping teams be more effective to helping organizations be more effective. And how do we help people across an organization, the leaders of the team, actually enhance their capability to work with teams themselves? All of these things are fluid. If somebody presents to you a new debate, one that you haven't considered before, just considering that debate and its implications on the work that you do will shift your 3Ps.
Yeah. And Paul, where does this fall? That what is facilitation? What is team coaching? Does it also fall in the 3Ps for you?
Well, that's one of the, yes, because that's one of the debates. So there is a school of thought, and it's probably the most popular school of thought in the team coaching space that says, yes, you must be able to be clear about what's the difference between team coaching, training, mentoring, facilitation. Indeed, in the ICF team coaching competencies, among those competencies is that you are absolutely clear with the team at any point in time what you're doing. Am I coaching you? Am I facilitating you? Am I consulting with you? Am I training you? And you've got to be really clear and transparent around that. There's another school of thought that says, I don't think I do need to be super clear around those things. I just need to be clear about whether I've got the right skills to do this particular piece of work. And I don't think my clients want me to keep piping up and saying, oh, I'm doing coaching now. Oh, now I'm doing facilitation. Now I'm doing, because they don't really care as long as they know I've got the skills to do the work. So it is a debate. My own 3Ps, you probably heard where I'm sort of leaning towards, because if it's important to define the difference between team coaching, team facilitation and training, then we all have to be on the same page. And all of those distinctions that I've looked at, none of them quite resonate for me. So the ICF team coaching, in their introduction to their team coaching competencies, they say, for example, the process for a facilitator is to facilitate dialogue, as opposed to a team coach where it's about the team and the coach partner. Well, facilitating dialogue for me is a core part of what I do as a team coach. They talk about team building and the growth area there is around enhancing relationships, whereas for team coaching, it's achieving goals and team sustainability. Well, for me, enhancing relationships is often part of what I do as a team coach. The Sage Handbook, they again, the Sage Handbook of Coaching, the Routledge Practitioners Handbook of Team Coaching, they say team coaching is about performance improvement, team facilitation is about improving the process of team collaboration. I don't see that distinction. So if that's the way we lean, we're all going to have to agree on it. And I don't know that we ever will. And if we ever did, doesn't mean the facilitators are going to agree with us, or the team consultants and the trainers, and they're all talking to our clients as well. So I don't really, for me, and I'm in a minority, I'm not sure I quite see the importance of all that.
Yeah, to me,
That's just my 3Ps, and there are plenty of people who do, and I totally respect that.
Yeah. And I'm really happy that we could discuss this, because I look at it as spraying jargons, these words, team coaching, facilitation. And that's also very funny. I'm coaching a team and suddenly I stand up, Hey, now I'm facilitating. And then I sit down.
Mm.
Hey, now I'm training. Just because you ask how do you differentiate between cognitive trust and effective trust? Because
Mm.
often when we work with team, this trust comes a lot. You know that the trust is one factor. Like as you
Mm.
said, in my three key things, I think team trust is a very, very important thing. And I connect this with dialogue. Only when we have trust, we can dialogue. Otherwise, we can't dialogue.
Mm. Mm.
So, and I cannot suddenly stand up because I'm talking about a particular framework. Hey, now I'm training because I am doing what serves my client. That's how I look at it as a team coach.
Mm. Yeah, that's how I look at it too. And I think there's a couple of things. One, I think part of the reason people are very keen to distinguish them, and it's only part of the reason, is because some people would like team coaching to be a really boundaried profession. And that's hence the effort. The other reason given is it helps clients become clear on the work that you're doing. I don't buy into that as long as you are super clear about what you feel competent to do and what you don't feel competent to do, and you've got some kind of a language around that. But I don't think we all have to have the same language around that.
Absolutely. I think that's another important part that you're also saying that each team coach is different. Each
Yeah.
team coach will have their own three Ps
Yeah.
and different viewpoints and what they think that what falls into the ambit of team coaching. That will be different for different team coaches
What it is?
and different teams will find resonance with different team coaches and basis that they will be contracting.
Yeah.
And that's the thing start. I
Yeah.
think that's super clear from our conversation.
Yeah.
So, Paul, the last question that how do you see the future of team coaching as more and more team coaches are being certified?
Hmm.
Uh, I see in LinkedIn the number of people who are writing team coaches against their name is increasing every day. So,
Yeah.
how do you look at the future of team coaching?
Um, yeah, I think it's a similar-ish question to what's the future of coaching. I think um, what you have is a group of people who are out there seeking to help organizations to become more effective through the work that they do with their teams. People are looking at organizations and saying, well, we do work in clusters of people. You kind of have to. And we want to help those clusters, those groups to become more effective. That's what we're trying to do. And I think that as a group of practitioners, there'll be at least some of us who will work together to learn together to progressively become better at that. And that's the community that with TLAM, that's the community that we're putting together, a community of people who are looking to learn from each other and become better at that together. At the same time, for the time being, you've got another group of people, and there's overlap, but you've got a group of people who are trying to really define this thing in terms of competencies and skills and trying to take this single model of what it means to be a team coach out to everybody. And that group of people also will continue to grow. And again, I'm kind of biased because I've got my own three Ps. I think that's because team coaching is really complex and we like to simplify things. And so there'll be a real appetite for that. Wow, this how do you work with a team? Well, this association over here have distilled it down into these 12 competencies, and that's beautiful and that's very attractive. And I think the question is, how do those communities work together? And I think they can work together because it's kind of that simplification process is helpful as long as you don't attach too much value to it. It's helpful. So I think the future of team coaching is basically all of us, coaches, clients, teams, organizations, just finding ways of helping organizations to become more effective through this particular focus on working with groups and teams. And consultants are in the mix. A lot of consultants do work with teams and do very good work and work with team dynamics, and so do some facilitators. So it's that kind of broader community of people working together. I think we'll just get better at it.
I like this idea of building broader community where not only team coaches are there, but
Mm.
facilitators, team
Mm.
consultants, trainers, everyone.
Yeah.
So I hear a sense of collaboration That's what you see going forward.
Yeah, we don't want to demonize others. It's about, we all get slightly, well, I do anyway, I get slightly irritated sometimes by people who maybe hold a different perspective to me. Well, fine, but you've got to be self-aware around that and recognize that everybody has a valid perspective, and it's good to learn. That's the dialogue piece. That's the dialogue piece that sits at the heart of an effective team, and we need to be living that ourselves. That as that broader community, we're only going to really grow as the broad community if we've all got kind of respect for and a curiosity and interest around how other people in the community think and what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a very warm and hopeful future that you're painting. And so here it is, Paul Lawrence, the author of the latest book, The Wise Team Coach. Paul, you can show it once more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I must tell you, as an early reader, I really enjoyed reading the book. It's great learning. And I always say something about Paul's writing, that every sentence in Paul's writing is dense. It's difficult to do a summary of his book because they're small. You can't summarize it anymore. And every sentence is important, and every sentence can be used in practice. And especially the chapter, I think I have not read any book where someone has compared the skills and competencies of different coaching associations, and that was a great learning for me, where I could see the convergence and divergence of it. And this wisdom of 3 Ps, I think that's the real wisdom of the book. If you ask me, the real wisdom is that, okay, find your 3 P, go figure. I think that's how I look at the book, and also the 10 debates that Paul talks about. I think they will greatly enrich a team coach's perspective. And I'm sure as a reader, you will add another 10 debates. And I think the debates will continue.
Yeah.
And that's how the community that, Paul, you look for a future for making teams more effective. And I also hear the word that you dropped many times, helping. I think when I write my 3 Ps, I see one of the word that constantly comes in my second P, which is purpose, is help. Help. And I think you're also dropping that word many times. So it's good to see that resonance. So I would tell all the team coaches, or who are even thinking of learning team coaching, I think this book will be a great starting point. And thank you, Paul, for writing the book.
No problem.
And the hard work it shows.
Thank you, Suva. And it is written for team. It's not just written for experienced team coaches. The 3 Ps is a place we can just start to focus on day one. As you said, it's a journey. It's a journey. It's a journey. A journey that I think is relevant to all of us, and that's why I've written it. And I'm really happy that you found it interesting and useful.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul, for your time. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Suva. Thank you.